Some stories are rooted in reality, yet exist far beyond the reach of ordinary people. We have gathered mysterious and chilling tales from across the world, experiences that people themselves lived, events that truly unfolded in their lives. One such story has reached us from Cairo, Egypt. Let us uncover what mysterious events befell them.
It was my final exam, and I was studying in my room. Suddenly, a singing voice caught my attention. The voice was beautiful, yet powerful, and I froze in surprise. I realized the sound was coming from the hall. I stepped toward the door, but as soon as I reached for it, a dizzy spell hit me. Everything blurred for a few moments, and then I regained my senses and opened the door. The house was empty. Grandma was sick, and my father and my older sister Layla had gone to visit her. I was alone. I thought maybe someone had returned without telling me, but this voice wasn't Layla's. It was terrifying enough to wake the dead. As I moved closer, the voice seemed to retreat and then returned from afar. Eventually, I heard it outside my room, mixed with a strange static, like a radio. Frightened, I retreated back into my room and shouted, "Don't joke around, it's not Layla." At that moment, the lamp fell and shattered. Darkness engulfed the room. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone for light, but the room was completely silent and still. Suddenly, something flashed past me, and the door slammed shut. I felt a weight beneath my feet, as if something was holding my breath. Faint whispers echoed in my ears. Frozen with fear, my eyes wide, I couldn't move, and then everything vanished. The door opened again. I turned my head and saw thick smoke in the living room. My vision was limited. Darkness returned, and I felt as if a spiral of shadow had swallowed me. I had no sense of time, but when I opened my eyes, sunlight streamed through the window, and I was back in bed. I quickly glanced at the lamp. The sound of it breaking had actually happened. That's when I realized it had all been a dream. I wiped my face, got out of bed, took a shower, prayed, dressed, and resumed my studying. When I returned from my exam, Layla, my older sister, was in front of me. We spoke for a little while, and then she left the room to go to work. I went to my room, changed clothes, grabbed some food, and sat on my phone. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the living room. I looked toward the door and saw something dark. Fear surged in me, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe something had fallen. Then, from a distance, I heard a laugh, chilling and unnatural. Fear gripped me again. I thought that if anything happened, I could jump out the window, but I kept telling myself, "It's all a dream. It's all a dream." I played the Quran on YouTube, and the moment it started, the second door of my room slammed shut with a loud bang. My heartbeat raced uncontrollably. I held my phone tightly against my chest, because at that moment, it felt like my only protection. My fear was so overwhelming that I couldn't even move, like some unknown force had me bound. I wasn't ready to see anything. Within a few minutes, with the recitation of the Quran, everything became calm again. I stretched my body across the bed, trying to convince myself that it wasn't real. The urge to sleep was overpowering, and soon, sleep pulled me in. In that sleep, I felt someone touching my hair. A rough hand pressed against my forehead. The touch was harsh, and it felt as though some of my hair had been pulled out. Terrified, I opened my eyes. Darkness, only darkness surrounded me. The Quran had stopped, and instead, an ad was playing. I suddenly felt someone approaching my bed. At that moment, I prayed for death. Then came the sound of claws scratching. I was helpless. I whispered to myself, "Be brave, try to run." I rushed to the door and flung it open, but what I saw froze me in terror. Outside, there was nothing but dust and sand. My room was standing in the middle of a desert, under a dim moonlight. A huge dark shadow loomed there. My heartbeat thundered. A figure clothed in black, only its eyes glowing like burning embers, advanced toward me. I tried to run, but stumbled and fell hard to the ground. The moment it reached near me, it vanished into thin air. I looked around frantically. left and right, searching for it, convinced it would attack. Suddenly, I heard my name being called from far away. Without thinking, I ran, not knowing where I was going. Pain shot through my feet, and I couldn't run anymore. My body burned with fever. The air itself seemed to thin, suffocating me. It felt as though my soul was about to leave my body. Then, in a sudden jolt, I woke up. For a few moments, I was frozen in shock. Regaining some sense, I leaped out of bed, switched on the light. Nothing. Everything was normal. I held my head in my hands and stumbled into the kitchen, gulping down an entire bottle of water. As though I hadn't had a sip in a week. I felt like I had just escaped death. I poured water over my head too, hoping to ease the burning pain inside. It was perhaps the worst nightmare of my life. So real, so vivid, that I couldn't separate it from reality. Somehow, I dragged myself back to my room. The time was around 9 p.m. I had slept heavily, and later went to the living room to check if Layla had come. I remembered seeing her. It was almost 10 by then. She works at the nearby pharmacy. I sat in the living room, my mind spinning. What is happening to me? Is this hallucination, madness, or reality? Or maybe just the pressure of my exams? Suddenly, my phone rang, making me jump. My throat went dry as I checked the screen. It was Layla. I spoke to her briefly, then ended the call. Then I got up and went to the kitchen, touching the fridge door, and felt a slight electric shock, as always. Then I saw something in the glass of the fridge. It seemed like an illusion, and when I slightly turned my face to look at it from the corner of my eye, my body went cold. It was the same thing I had seen in my dream. I was shrinking with fear, struggling to breathe, my heart pounding. At that moment, I heard the door, and Layla said, "I'm here." But when I looked again, no one was there. I told Layla what I had seen, and she said I needed rest. It was just fatigue and exam stress. I tried to believe her, but deep inside, my whole being was gripped by fear. I decided to pray regularly, recite dhikr, and focus on Allah's words, certain that everything would be fine. Layla heated the food, and we ate together. The exhaustion was visible in her eyes. After eating, she went to her room, and I was left alone in the hall. Still feeling the presence of that unknown force, I went to Layla and said I would sleep in her room. She agreed, but I couldn't fall asleep. She slept, and I stayed awake, eventually leaving the room. I didn't close the door, just prepared to hide. Sitting in the hall, I picked up my phone and tried calling my father, but there was no answer. Even the movement of air frightened me. I went to the bathroom, turned on the tap for wudu, and at first, no water came. I tried again. Water flowed. I completed wudu and prepared for prayer. The phone rang, but no one was there. Later, I heard it again in the hall, but when I checked, there was nothing. Layla said she had heard the phone too, but it had been silent. I told her the phone wasn't ringing, and Layla came over. She played Quran recitations for me, and also performed ruqya. I felt my breath stop, and I fainted. When I woke up, Layla was sitting with me on the sofa in the hall, and a neighbor was there, helping me. I wasn't ready to answer questions, only trying to compose myself. I went to my room, closed the door, lay on the bed, and stared at the ceiling. Everything that had happened wouldn't leave my mind. I was sure an unwelcome guest had been with us, and wondered who would drive it away. I asked myself, will this end? Then the bedroom door opened, and Layla asked what had happened. I said, something strange happened in the house. Layla asked how it was strange. I said, call Baba, they should come. Layla said, all right, call them, sit here with me. Layla got irritated and said, will they leave their work to come, dear? It's all in your mind. Don't think too much. No one is here. Nothing will happen. I am with you. She said if I wanted, she could take leave and stay with me, but I didn't want to. She kept talking, and I didn't pay attention. She got frustrated with my silence and left. When I picked up the phone, it was off. I decided to call Baba. I put it on charge and went to the hall. I played Quran on the TV, and as soon as I did, I heard Layla's voice. She opened her room door and ran as if crazy. I froze, unable to move. She stood in front of me, panting, fear written all over her face. Someone was in the room. I saw them. I grabbed her hand as she always did with me, and we both ran into another room and closed the door. I said I told her something unusual was happening, and she didn't listen. Layla said she believed me and fell silent for a while, lost in thought. She began speaking strange, nonsensical sentences. I asked why, if she knew something. Layla said she didn't know and stayed silent, staring at the floor. I asked again, and she said I had mentioned in my dream that I saw a statue wrapped in red thread, like a dragon. I said a lot, but don't remember most. I asked why I hadn't paid attention and told her to forget riddles and puzzles. Just tell me. The shock came when Layla said it was in the drawer at the pharmacy where she worked. Recently, the manager had been locking it with a key. I was surprised. I knew it was very private, but my curiosity grew about what was inside. A few days earlier, I had seen it open, and my curiosity increased. I saw, among papers, a small dragon statue wrapped in red thread. It looked old and impressed me. I thought if I took it, she wouldn't notice because she was busy with papers. I took it. That day, the manager asked me about it. I got scared she would think I had stolen it. She was going to check the cameras, but nothing came up. I decided to return it. At home, I looked at the statue. Its form fascinated me strangely. I felt suffocated. The red thread around its neck was the reason. I removed the thread, and immediately a strong gust of air was felt. My heart raced. I wrapped the thread back and put the statue in a bag. That night, in a dream, a terrifying creature tried to change my face. I couldn't sleep, feeling watched, my breaths all around me. I decided to return it to its place the next day, which I did at the pharmacy. A few days later, strange things happened, but I tried to ignore them and forgot about the statue. I asked Layla if she was playing with me. She denied it, saying he will come, and what happened won't happen again. We decided to sleep. The Quran was playing, and we slept in our rooms. I held the phone. The Quran's voice distorted, sounding strange. I put my hand on Layla's shoulder, trying to wake her. Finally, she woke up. We heard a knock on the door. Our eyes widened, hearts pounding. The knocking stopped. From a distance, we heard laughter, and the door shook. The bed moved as if there was an earthquake. We both clutched each other in fear. We saw that the dragon-like statue was actually large, with red eyes. It seemed to move. We sat in the corner of the sofa, terrified, unable to close the room or go out. We thought to call Baba, but the phone was missing. We couldn't move from fear, so we decided to sit like that until morning, which we did. We stayed on the floor, supporting each other until morning. When we finally decided to get up, there was a knock on the house door. Alhamdulillah, we heard our father's voice. We ran to open the door, but he looked extremely angry. He said they had been trying to call us repeatedly, and we hadn't answered. We both cried and told them everything from start to finish. They were concerned. They assured us and said they would bring a religious scholar to perform protective prayers so that the matter of the dragon could be investigated. When we returned to Layla's room, the dragon was gone. About 2 hours later, a scholar came, recited prayers, sprinkled holy water, and performed several rituals. Afterward, he said the house was now safe and everything was fine. We asked about the dragon, and he said it had no connection. It had all been due to the house's construction, and the presence had gone. My father was very tired and needed sleep. When it was Layla's turn to work, she left the room and tried to learn something about the statue to make sure it had nothing to do with our problems. While we were talking, I picked up my phone and started looking at it. Suddenly, I felt as if a shadow had entered the kitchen right next to me. Then I heard the sound of water, and the bathroom light turned on. I tried in vain to calm my fear and quietly called out to my father. I was slowly approaching the door, and my father's voice was coming from the bathroom, but he wasn't responding. Since my father was home, I felt somewhat reassured. As I got close to the door, the water sound stopped. Mustering my courage, I opened the bathroom door, but there was no one inside. However, I sensed something in the mirror, and at that moment, the sound of the Quran filled the room loudly. I gathered my courage and looked at the mirror. I saw a strange shadow, and it felt like I was moving toward it against my will. My feet moved on their own, and I stood in front of the mirror. My reflection looked normal, as expected, but I saw my father behind my back. His face appeared at the edge of my back, smiling, a terrifying smile, fully intense on both sides, creating a sense of dread. I didn't know what to say. I turned around, there was no one there. Now, he was back in the mirror. The black part of his eyes was moving rapidly. I screamed and ran out of the bathroom. As I was about to leave the bathroom, someone grabbed me and threw me to the ground. I crawled back toward the bathroom. The door was shaking and the light went out. It felt like something was holding my hands and feet, climbing onto my arms. The thing holding my feet was moving up and down, and I heard a whisper near my ear, a terrifying whisper that I couldn't understand. I didn't know what to do. Should I stay on the ground, or... I kept saying, "Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord." Suddenly, the bathroom door opened on its own. The light was out, and there was light outside. I was lying on the ground, my hands and feet bound, trying to free myself. Eventually, I managed to move and get out of the bathroom, but the thing that had held my feet wouldn't let go. As soon as I left the bathroom, it released me, and the door closed on its own. I heard a terrifying laugh from inside. I reached the sofa, extremely frightened. Then I heard the room door opening. I saw the same person I had seen before, in black clothes, with glowing eyes, smiling at me and reaching out. And then the door slammed shut. I was breathing heavily, my body trembling, my mind in chaos. I kept saying, "Oh Lord, oh Lord, if death is the solution, then give me death." Then I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was still on the sofa. There was a knock at the room door. It was Layla's voice. My body initially didn't want to move, but I gathered courage, got up, and peered through the door hole. It wasn't Layla. It was a person in white clothes holding the statue. I stepped back, pulling my hair and screaming until my father came out. I told him the statue was still there. We would all die. My mind was exploding. I didn't know what I was saying. I just kept crying. My father told me to rest for a while on the sofa. He stayed awake with me. For me, he was my protection, support, and everything, the greatest sense of peace. My head was splitting with pain, my body broken. I collapsed on the sofa and tried to close my eyes. My father held my hand, looking terrified at my condition. Sleep finally won the yes. Sleep is a beast that ultimately prevails in every battle. Suddenly, a strong thud sounded, as if a blow hit my brain. I was in my room, which looked different. The window opened and closed on its own. The air was cold, the scent strange. There was a large candle with the statue behind it, but it looked huge, almost alive, as if it were breathing. I kept saying, "Awudu billahi min." Layla was standing near the door, laughing and calling my name. A red thread was wrapped around her neck, and very dark blood was flowing from it. In front of me, both of Layla's arms started bending strangely, and her back also bent. I could hear the sound of bones cracking. I covered my ears and kept repeating, "Who are you? Enough, enough." This was a crazy nightmare. The sounds of screaming and striking hands surrounded me. Over me, I was jumping on the floor, hearing my father's voice, and also Layla's voice, which pierced my mind and invaded the dream. When I woke up in reality, it didn't feel much different, as the dream was as terrifying as reality. Layla was sitting next to me. I was broken and hysterically crying, repeatedly telling my father that we needed to leave. A few minutes later, we arrived home, and the religious scholar inspected every corner. Suddenly, a strong wind blew. The religious scholar had a bottle of water, which he sprinkled inside the house, then told us to remain quiet and calm. We sat in a circle. The religious scholar took black soil from the bag and applied verses while placing it on the statue. The religious scholar made markings with his hands, reciting Quranic verses and specific supplications. During this, the wind strengthened. The jinn cried out from the statue. Its cries were clearly audible. Then suddenly, everything fell silent. But the religious scholar continued the ritual. He covered the statue with black soil, hid its features, wrapped it with a large red thread, and covered it with cloth. I understood it was temporarily contained. It needed to be buried somewhere far away. We quickly got in the car and went to a distance. The statue was shaking. Its spirit was active. We reached the place. My father started digging, while the religious scholar held the statue. It had strange power. Layla and I were terrified, holding on to each other. My father completed the digging. The religious scholar placed soil over it. With each burial, terrifying sounds were heard. The religious scholar continued reciting Quranic verses, and the ground trembled lightly, intensifying. The religious scholar said, "By Allah's grace, it is now contained. We should not be curious, as curiosity opens the door to problems and harm." Layla said, "I will never do this again." Today, she learned a lesson she will never forget. My father thanked the religious scholar and asked if the house was now safe. The religious scholar said, "By Allah's command, go home now. Stay close to each other. Embrace your children, pray, and remember Allah." We returned from the religious scholar's house. The house felt peaceful and fragrant. My father said, "Bismillah, the name by which nothing in heaven or earth can harm. He is the all-hearing." My father said they were forced to leave everything and would change their jobs. Well, what happened? We could never forget. Even today, remembering that moment makes my body shiver. Layla left the pharmacy, and after some time, the nightmares, voices, and thoughts stopped. I am sharing this experience to warn people so that they remain cautious.